Here we are at the Awakening UFO and Conscious Life Expo in Blackpool. It is Europe's premier consciousness event where we're delving much deeper than just the nuts and bolts of ufology, ancient civilizations, metaphysics, and we are actually looking into our multidimensionality. Right now, we're joined with a very special guest, Dr. Theresa Bullard. Thank you for being with us today. I'm just going to briefly introduce Dr. Theresa, but I just want to mention this incredibly important exclusive interview is working in affiliation with Zohar Entertainment and Gaia. I'm Kristen Gillespie, your conscious investigative reporter, and I'm going to introduce Theresa now. Dr. Theresa Bullard, you're a physicist, an author, a speaker, an international teacher, a change agent, and host of mystery teachings on Gaia TV. Throughout her lifelong journey, she has discovered innovative ways to weave together her formal education as a PhD physicist with her deep training in the modern mystery school lineage. I can't wait to get into that. She has a passion for bridging science and spirituality in a practical way. Dr. Theresa has presented to live audiences around the world since 2002, helping thousands of people awaken to their greater potential, find deeper meaning and purpose, and achieve greater success in life. Fusing modern-day quantum physics with powerful, time-tested techniques for harnessing consciousness, Dr. Theresa brings a truly fresh, mind-expanding, and powerfully altering approach. So, Dr. Theresa, you've pondered the biggest questions, like who are we? Where are we from? What's our purpose? How has your experience within the mystery school tradition helped you gain access to the answers to these questions?
Well, so much of our ways in which we're brought up in the world that it tries to tell us that who we are and what we are is based on our personality, our physical body, the family we come from, our religion, our job, all these things that are based on outer circumstances and, things that are not us, they're outside of us. And yet we try to define ourselves by those. And yet when you study into the ancient mystery school tradition, it's helping you really come to know who you are from the inside out versus from the outside in. So it's really about getting in touch with your core essence. What is it that makes me me? What is it when I say I, or I am this, or I am that? Who is that I? Right? And so what I have found through the mystery school tradition is that who we really are and what we really are is this eternal essence that is pure awareness, intelligence, and it has wisdom. We have all the knowledge that we need already inside of us. At a personality level, we've forgotten that knowledge, but our journey in life is just a process of remembering what is already within us. So mystery school tradition is always about know thyself. And as we come to know who we are, what we are, both our strengths and our weaknesses, our light and our dark, and we then come to understand our life, how things are flowing in our life, why certain things are manifesting or happening the way they are. And we come to understand more of the world and how the world is reflecting us back to us. And then we understand how we are also a reflection of the universe, and it continues on. And, just from a physicist perspective, we often may say, well, everything is energy, and that we are energy. And the way that metaphysics comes in and adds to that, it says, yes, we are energy, and that energy is intelligent. That there is an awareness, there is a consciousness to that, there is a spiritual side to that, something beyond the physical. And that is really where our true essence resides.
As I'm listening to you, I'm really feeling the magic coming through your words, especially vocabulary like remembering. It's a loaded word, isn't it? And we know how important semantics are in the mechanics of creation. Now, if we take your concepts a bit further, and I think this conference is really thirsty for an influence such as yours, which is quite feminine in nature. How can we bring in that sacred feminine energy into a traditionally masculine-dominated industry such as ufology?
It's interesting because I run in many circles, right? I've been in the physics world, which is very masculine-dominated. I've been in the alchemy world, which is very masculine-dominated, and then I've been in the more spiritual, personal growth fields, which are very women dominated. There's a lot more women in them than men. And, you know, I find that the sciencey, more intellectual approaches to metaphysics and all, you know, trying to understand the universe tend to be more like attract more the men because it's logical, it's grounded, and it's practical in some ways, or we can wrap our hands around it. It's tangible, right? Whereas in the more personal growth or more spiritual, feeling-oriented healing arts, it's more feeling. It's about how we feel inside. It's a resonance that is more intuitive. It's more it's not about the logic. It's not even about the emotion. It's more just about, this is what I feel, you know, from a more right brain or intuitive perspective. So I think when it comes to bringing the feminine into this world of, you know, ufology, is to recognize, first of all, that everything in the universe has both feminine and masculine principles to them. The masculine is more the outward reaching. It's more the purpose-driven expansion of seeking out and trying to, you know, express its light, its essence. The feminine is more about the inward process, what's going on inside of us. And one of the things that I introduced during my presentation was an experience, you know, okay, let's not just talk about it and stay in the realm of the mind and the intellectual. Let's bring it in to the body. Let's feel this for a moment. Let's really have an experience of connecting to the energy and noticing, what does that do inside of me? Right? How does that shift? If we chant something, or we do a meditation, or we meditate upon a sacred geometric glyph, for example, and we work with some of these formulas that come from the ancient mystery tradition, and that moves something inside of us. And when we can get more in touch with the subtle vibrations, the inner experience that we're having, then we can bring more of the feminine in. Because the feminine is about holding that container and what's happening inside of that container. It's about the energetic field. It's what are we receiving, not just what are we trying to connect with out there. It's about connecting in here. And I think that there's more patience that's involved with the feminine, more nurturing. You know, how does this help us to heal? How does this help us to raise our vibration, to become more whole as humans? But we need both sides. We need both the masculine and the feminine. So I think as we move forward in our world today and into the future, we're coming to this time where there's emerging, you know, where the feminine and the masculine are trying to come together and walk hand in hand again, versus it's female-dominated or male-dominated, matriarchy or patriarchy. You know, let's get rid of all of that. And it's not about being, we're all equal. It's not about, we're definitely all equally important, equally needed, but we have different functions. We have different ways of flowing energy. And that's an important thing to recognize, because that is part of the formula of creation. We would not have creation without masculine energy, and which is more force, and feminine energy, which is more formative. We need both for creation. And this is physics just as much as it is about you and I and you know, our dynamics in the world socially as humans. So we need both. And we're coming to this time where we're meant to be co-creating as men and women. We're meant to be finding that perfect balance between a masculine way and a feminine way, the yin, the yang, working together, creating harmony and balance together. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that helps, you know, see, like, how can we bring more of this feminine approach into the ufology? Is like, well, let's experience, not just from a phenomenology perspective, which is, again, more about like what's happening out there, but more from a what's happening in here, and what can I do to connect to that source and feel it inside in my inner world, versus just recognize it and see it in the outer world.
I am getting goosies as I listen to you, because I'm very touched by the high vibrations that you are bringing, not only to this event, but also to the world of ufology and beyond, to our world, our Earth. And it is so needed right now. I do subscribe to the idea that feeling is healing. Would you agree?
Well, first becoming aware of what we're feeling. So awareness, I would say, is the key to our healing. The more we bring the awareness in, the more the light can come in, the more we can bring then that healing and transformation that is needed. So, yeah.
Do you believe that emotions are indeed dimensions in a sense?
I believe that emotions are a form of energy that is expressed from higher realms, from more spiritual realms through our soul. And emotion is sort of like our soul's language, a way of communicating something to us that we need to pay attention to on the inner planes versus just what's going on out there. It's like, yeah, okay, maybe some external event might trigger the emotion, but what is it saying about what I really feel inside? What are these emotions trying to tell me? Do I need healing? Is this something I need to be aware of? Is it something that is bringing me upliftment, or is it bringing the energy down, right? So I think emotions are an energy, and those energies definitely come from higher planes.
Speaking of emotions and feelings, it seems we are all searching for deeper meaning in life. But what does it mean to be truly multidimensional?
Well, what put me on my search ultimately was that search for deeper meaning. I was pursuing the intellectual as a scientist and the physics and trying to understand the universe and so forth. But in the end, it was like, why am I doing this? Is it just so I can get a job and, or pass that degree or follow the system? Or is there something deeper behind this? And ultimately it was that search for meaning that put me on that spiritual path, to search into the metaphysical realms beyond the physical. And, so meaning is important, right? It brings joy into our life, that sense of purpose. And when we have a sense of purpose and joy from having a meaningful life, it fulfills us, right? Rather than having to seek just temporary pleasures or happiness, which is kind of usually based on outer circumstances, we can have true fulfillment by searching for what is going to bring meaning and purpose into our life. And then that's from an inside out, because it's about what I'm bringing to the world, not just about what I'm experiencing in the world. It's about what I'm expressing from the inside out. So yeah, there's a sense of real alignment with who we are and why we're here when we step into fulfilling that deeper, meaningful life and purposeful life. But living a multidimensional life is realizing that your purpose isn't just one thing. That you can have many things that you're here to do, many things you're here to experience, to enjoy, to express, in many different creative ways. It's about recognizing that we aren't just one-dimensional. We aren't two-dimensional. We're not even three-dimensional. We are multidimensional. And the more that we become aware of our multidimensionality beyond this 3D physical experience, we have so much more going on at these higher realms. We have our soul, we have our spirit, we have all these different dimensions above and beyond this physical existence, and yet all of it is here now. And we can experience all of it here now. It's almost like different radio stations playing, and if we were to set up a radio, receiver right now, we could tune the dial into all these different stations, and we would pick up on different, music or maybe news or different information coming from these different stations. So it's all here right now. And what we need to do to tune into our multidimensionality is learn how to adjust our dial based on shifting consciousness. So as we learn to shift consciousness and then use clear intention of what we're trying to tune into, then we can start accessing more of that multidimensionality, the information coming in from those higher frequencies and lower frequencies. And what do we choose to, pay attention to and resonate with and so forth. And then that can inform our life. And then it's not just about being aware of what's going on out there. It's about, okay, now how do I take that in and apply it here now in this density so that we can manifest more of our full potential into this physical life. So it's like bringing all of that infinite possibility and, manifesting that by living an abundant life, living a joyful life, living an exciting life, really expressing multiple gifts that are all from within our spirit and bringing it into fruition and actualization in the world.
What we focus on, we feed, right?
Yeah, for sure. What you focus on expands, and which wolf are you going to feed inside of you, so to speak? And that's the one that's going to rule your life. So we learn to focus on that we are more than just one thing, right? We are many things.
Absolutely. Dr. Theresa is really grounding a lot of these cosmic concepts. Now, I want to turn the conversation to the Kabbalistic text of the Book of Formation that you talk about. Is it truly an instruction manual for life?
Well, I would say Kabbalah is an instruction manual for life, but that is a vast system of oral teachings and different practices and ways in which we can apply this very esoteric knowledge and these concepts that are taught in Kabbalah and then apply it to life. So Kabbalah itself is called the study of life, or one thing that we could describe it as is the study of life. The Sefer Yetzirah, which is one of the oldest written texts of the Kabbalistic tradition. Now, Kabbalah is an oral tradition. It's very ancient. And mostly its teachings and knowledge were handed down from mouth to ear through the oral storytelling and transmission of knowledge through teachings and so forth. But around the 1st century, and then later in the 11th century and so forth, more of the Kabbalistic knowledge from the oral tradition was being written down. And one of those that was first written down was a book called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation. Now this book, if you read it, it's really short. It's like 30 pages maybe. But when you read it, it doesn't really. It's not something that you're going to just understand from today's way of thinking. You read and you're like, what in the world are they talking about? But when you have the oral teachings and you read it, it's actually an alchemical codex. It's a codex for how the universe was created, how the divine source created space itself, how it created all things in the universe, working with what we call the 22 letters of and numbers, which were like frequencies of energy. The letters were more like patterns of energy, and like a language of creation, and then sounds, which were the expression of those energies out into a way that would actually form and shape matter. And then it gets into this very elaborate process of how the divine source, for example, created, what combinations of letters were used. And what you have to understand is that these Hebrew letters are not like our modern day alphabets. There's certain ancient languages like Hebrew, Kanji, Sanskrit. These are some of the ancient languages that are still intact today that we understand, and how we can maybe translate them into our modern languages. But in those times, those languages were volumes worth of information. They were archetypes. They were like holographic information packed into one letter. As we unpack the information contained within just a single letter, again, these are letters, these are language of creation. They're not like a letter like our normal alphabet. And there's volumes and volumes of information contained within them. And this is what Kabbalah is trying to study and understand. Is we call them numbers, letters, and sounds, but in today's, maybe more scientific terminology, we could call it energy, like frequencies. We could call it movement and transformational process of how we go from one state of energy to another state of energy. And then we have like the expression, the outward form of those energies that we can actually perceive, how it's expressed out to actually create the universe. So it can tie into string theory, for example. It can tie into quantum physics. This is how deep these things are. But in the ancient times, they had a metaphorical language of talking about them as numbers, letters, and sounds. And so the Sefer Yetzirah is very much about all of these letters and these numbers and what their meanings are, and some of the principles that they address and they deal with, and what the sequences that we use and how we combine them together to create formulas for manifesting things. And they say like everything in that's ever been created in our universe or will ever be created in our universe is made of these 22 letters in some combination or another. You can almost think of them like, like your periodic table. They're like the basic elements, but this is now at a much more cosmic, like string theory level or, quantum physics level. It's deep. As you get deeper and deeper into it, there's so many layers and layers that you can come to understand when you meditate upon, and you have the oral teachings from Kabbalah, and then you meditate upon what is revealed and written down in the Sefer Yetzirah. But if you haven't ever studied and heard the oral teachings from Kabbalah, it's hard to really just sit and read the Sefer Yetzirah and understand it, right? So it's one of those things that needs decoding.
Absolutely. And I'm thinking about the flame letters or fire codes that are often spoke of that I'm still trying to wrap my head around myself, actually. How do those relate to our DNA?
That's a great question. I love that. So one of the ways in which the fire letters come into our DNA, it's interesting because, within us, within our body, we talk about earth, water, air, and fire at many different levels, but the fire within us would actually be contained within the DNA. And we know from science today that our DNA, it's not just the double helix. There's far more going on inside of the DNA than just that. But there is light that is actually created, generated, emitted, and received by our DNA. That light is like fire. And so in the double helix, for example, if you were to just unwind it, you would see this, it looks like a ladder, right? And the base pairs come together. Well, that ladder structure is actually the tree of life. The sacred geometry of the tree of life is, if you were to stack tree of life upon tree of life upon tree of life, it forms that ladder. And then you just give it that clockwise twist and you create your double helix. So the tree of life, and we could expand upon that, which is something that I do in my mystery teaching series, especially in season 2. There's an episode, I think it was episode 2 of season 2 of Mystery Teachings, where I get really deep into the DNA and what we know scientifically about it, as well as what we know metaphysically about it from ancient mystery school teachings. And so the DNA is, we've got the tree of life as its core structure. And within the tree of life, we have the numbers, the letters, and the sounds that are emitted by it. And then, so all the 22 Hebrew letters, all of the fire letters, let's say, come together in this very particular pattern that forms the core structure of our DNA. So what scientists know of as our DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, that's just the chemical part of it. There's so much more going on at a deeper blueprint level inside the structure of the DNA. And the sacred geometries are often the forms that the physical reality are built upon. And the tree of life is one of the most important sacred geometries we could learn to, that we could study and learn about.
I love the concept of having a divine blueprint, but it seems that we have potentially imprints that almost overlay on our blueprint, perhaps coming from societal conditioning, even false matrix programming. How do we make sure that we are indeed living as true as possible to our own divine blueprint?
That's another great question. I love your questions. Yes, we have our divine blueprint, and then we have this indoctrination, let's say, this programming that's come in from our, if I may, I'm just going to use the analogy of the matrix, our life in the physical matrix, and that matrix makes us think that this is it, that this is who we are, this is all there is, the physical and the society and so forth. But that is an illusion. That is an indoctrination. It's a program that has caused us to forget our true nature. But so it kind of distorts as the information's coming down through, from the quantum, from the spiritual, through the quantum, through our DNA, and into our physicality. It's like that matrix overlay comes in and distorts the original divine blueprint. And this is why we fall out of alignment with who we really are and our true potential. So one of the things that we do in the Modern Mystery School is to help kind of plug you back in straight to that divine blueprint that's there. But it's like the lights have gotten turned off on it because we've fallen so out of alignment with it that it's gone dormant in some ways. And so there's these ancient modalities that have been passed down through the mystery school tradition from at least the time of King Solomon, but I think they go back even further to ancient Egypt and maybe even beyond that, which is about awakening. You know, in some of the ancient Egyptian and even ancient Sumerian, you know, you can see in Mesopotamian, you can see some of the hieroglyphs or the carvings of the gods, and they're holding a pine cone to the back of the head, or they're holding an ankh to the back of the head. Those are ancient rememberings or messages about reactivating the blueprints, the key of life, right? The ankh, for example, is the key to eternal life. And so there is these ancient practices and methods from the mystery school traditions that are about reawakening that original blueprint and turning on the light, turning on those keys within us that are held within our DNA. And in particular, they often relate to the pineal gland, which is said to be the seat of consciousness that interfaces from the spirit and the soul into the body. But it's really more than just the pineal. It's the pituitary, the hypothalamus, the old brain, the brainstem, all of that system needs to get reawakened. And so we can go in, because not only are we physical, we have what is called an etheric body that is like an energetic blueprint to who we are. And anything that's happening physically is also reflected, or its source is more in the etheric. And so we can go in there when you have a skilled practitioner who's been highly trained within the mystery school lineage. They can go in and they can reactivate the light. They can turn on those codes again within that etheric so that it feeds the right information into the physical. And it's bringing in a new stimulus that aligns you again with your original divine blueprints, who you really are. More intuition starts coming in, more self-awareness starts coming in, more realignment and recognition of your purpose starts coming in, more awareness of energy around us, our perceptions expand. You know, these things start to happen with that awakening, reawakening of our DNA. Now what we call it in the mystery school tradition is a life activation. And then we also have higher levels of it. We have a full spirit activation. We have a galactic activation. We have, etheric body. We have all these different levels of activations because, as we said before, we are multidimensional. So there's no one thing that's going to be the fix-all. There's no magic bullet. It's like, oh, here, let me take all your problems away. Boom. No, it's a journey, and it's meant to be a journey. We're meant to work for it because as we have to strive and overcome and work and conquer the hurdles, both the internal hurdles, some of those places where we might resist change or resist, rising up into a greater level of empowerment, which people do. We have to overcome those internal hurdles, but then we also have to overcome the external hurdles where people might say, oh, you're just crazy. You know what? Stop thinking about it. Just start focusing on something that's more practical. All the ways in the matrix that we disempower people from realizing, their greatness. So we have to overcome those hurdles because in the process of overcoming, we become stronger. And in order to rise into our full strength and potential and manifest and realize that, we have to become stronger through conquering those hurdles. And so the obstacle is the thing that we must learn to move past. Marcus Aurelius said, the obstacle is the way. Jesus Christ said, narrow is the gate and difficult is the way that leads to life. And there are few that find it. But broad is the gate and easy is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go there. Or I might have that, turned around. But the easy path is not the path to your full potential. The difficult path is, and it's a path of walking the middle way, right? The path of balance. And so this is all the things that we do within the mystery school lineage, is how to walk that path of balance, how to, really overcome the hurdles, really strengthen from within. And it's not about the knowledge, it's about the tools of empowerment that are handed down to you so that you can take them and use them for yourself, work them in your life, gain your own strength, awaken your own potential, because 95% of our awakening, our enlightenment, is going to come from our own efforts. It's going to come from us applying the knowledge and the tools into our life and living it and gaining direct experience and remembering who we are through that process versus it being taught to us. Maybe 5% is about having the right knowledge and the right tools and keys. And that pure knowledge, that hermetic, it's not dogmatic, it's universal. Here's the tools, here's the knowledge, these are the keys, this is how to use it, this is what we do in the mystery school. So that's the 5% that, just helps turn on those lights. And then the rest is up to you to use it, to apply it, right? So everyone's own attainment really is in their own hands. We don't put it in the hands of a guru, someone outside of us again, or even extraterrestrials to come and rescue us from ourselves. It's ultimately like they're here to help us, but we have to help ourselves too. Otherwise, it's not sustainable. It's like give a man a fish, he eats for a day, teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. We want to create a leap in collective consciousness as a human race. And to do that, we need to make the leap. We can have assistance, but we need to make the leap so that we can sustain a new level of being and create a new way of living on this earth and then beyond.
You just touched on such an important concept that there must be no intermediary between you and God, or source consciousness.
Exactly. I mean, and this is where, religion, education, government, all of them are mediators. They're trying to be an intermediary. And they're saying, no, in order to get to that, you have to come through me. But that's this empowerment again. It's like, it's the obstacle that, no, I need to go straight to that experience. So this is what, yes, we are teachers in the lineage, but that's just so that we can share the knowledge and pass it on to the next generation. And those who are ready to do their own work will have their own direct experience. And then the empowerment is theirs. They own it. It's not, your enlightenment doesn't come from me. Your enlightenment comes from you. And so we want to really empower people because we have to move beyond, the age of the gurus is done. The age of waiting for that savior to come and rescue us. We've been through so many cycles of that already. And, they've left their mark, but here we are still today and we haven't been saved because we keep being attached to our misery. And so we need to save ourselves. It's every individual now, it's up to us to awaken. And we really need to reach that critical mass within the collective of the people who are ready to do the hard work, to do the work that it takes to awaken ourselves, to be empowered, to be self-leading, and then to harness that energy and start manifesting things in the outer planes in a better way. And when we reach that critical mass, then there can be a spontaneous evolution, a spontaneous awakening within the collective consciousness, because we are one mind. There is one mind that we are all connected into. And as enough of us awaken and raise the vibration or the self-awareness level of that mind, then it creates the snowball, the ripple effect that then allows for an easier spontaneous awakening of the collective. They call it the 100th monkey effect. And what percentage of the population is that critical mass? Some say 10%, some say 3%, some say 1%. Some say even the square root of 0.1% or something.
The Maharishi effect.
Yeah. So I believe it's around 3%. I think the 1% gets the momentum going to hit the 3%. Once we hit the 3%, the snowball, the avalanche effect starts to happen to then, really spread it a lot faster. So we're in that precipice right now of making that leap. And that's why right now is such an exciting time. That's why right now it's like, okay, this isn't the time for gurus. This is the time for your awakening. And it's not about giving your power away to something outside of you, whether that's a guru, a teacher, or even a plant medicine. This is about your empowerment and you learning how to awaken the keys from within. And once you know how to establish those neural networks and open up those gates from within yourself, those gates of perception and awareness, and they're opening from within, now you have mastery of it. You have control of it. You can open it and close it when you want. And then it's sustainable. You know how to integrate it into your life versus just having this sort of one time like, whoa, it just happened, and having no idea how to come back and integrate that into life. So we want to live in the world because we want to create a better world, right? And if we're going to, science is talking about shifting from our current state of, burning fossil fuels and living on, just sort of the grid, planetary resources, for example, to making a shift to what they call a type 1 society, where we're harnessing all the energy that comes to us from the sun, for example, from outer space, and we can harness all that energy, all the natural and renewable energy, and then, use it well so that we can create a society that is prosperous, where we can overcome the issues of environmental degradation that's happening, or, there will be no lack, because there really is no lack in the universe. Lack is a mindset. And it's a part of the matrix program, right? And when you look at the universe is abundant, like infinitely abundant. So we learned how to start harnessing that energy. And so science is talking about it, futurists are talking about it, the metaphysicians and the mystics and the initiates have been talking about it, the prophecies have been talking about it, right? For thousands of years. We're living in those times right now. So it's exciting, but it also puts a lot of both opportunity and responsibility in our hands.
Dr. Theresa, you carry such a strong and profound, powerful message. And the road certainly does get narrower. And scarcity complex, lack, competition, these are all false matrix programs that are being called, or we're being asked to transcend. Now, the mystery school student is often referred to as the initiate. What does it mean to be initiated?
Well, to be initiated is to actually, you would learn, there will be oral teachings, direct, like in person, not just over the internet or over TV or anything like that, in-person training. And then there's a ceremony. There's an ancient ceremonial process of transferring that energy of the lineage, right? So to be initiated, it requires a lineage. So a lot of these teachings and concepts that I'm sharing with you, they're not mine. I can't claim ownership of them. They're maybe my way of expressing the ancient teachings that come through the lineage of the mystery school. And usually these mystery schools have been typically closed door and by invitation only, and it's the select few that are even invited to be initiated. But we live in such a time, as I was sharing, that this is a profound time, and it's a critical time on the planet right now. And because of that, we need the wisdom and the empowerment that the mystery school tradition has preserved over generations and generations and thousands of years. We need it for these times right now, so that we can harness that greater wisdom and knowledge and understanding and the proper methods and the proper understandings to really then bring them into how do we transform our society? How do we transform ourselves, first of all, our own lives? And then how do we take that into the world and help transform our society for the better? And so to now, one of the mystery schools has opened its doors. One of the ancient lineages that goes back thousands of years has opened up its doors. And there are other groups, of course, who have connection into the lineage. And we're more open, right? So the school, the modern mystery school that I study with, it's modern because it's ancient lineage that's been brought out into a modern context, a modern way of working with the mystery school tradition. In the past, for example, in a shamanic society or ancient Egyptian times, you would have had to go through some life-threatening challenges to prove your readiness to be initiated, and that then was a process of initiation. And then, once you were victorious of that, then you would, go through a certain ceremony. In today's world, life is constantly throwing us challenges, and it can very easily take us off track. Whereas in the past, we had to sort of manufacture the challenges to test our merit. But in today's world, like, life does it. And if we keep taking those steps forward towards the path that our soul feels called to, that is really going to lead towards more of our metaphysical awakening. There's a moment that everyone goes through that is something we call self-initiation. And that self-initiation moment is when we say, okay, there's more to life than what's going on out here. There's more. I see that there's a matrix here. There's something more and beyond that. And I want to know what that more is. And I'm ready to start committing my time, my energy, my efforts, even my investment into finding that something more, because that is what really matters. That is what brings meaning. And that moment of self-initiation, when we start really committing ourselves to our personal growth, our spiritual development, that then sets us on a journey where you can look back at that point in time and say, okay, my life really took a turning point right there. Then we can get so far on our own. But we kind of inevitably hit these plateaus, or we hit a door that's closed and we can't unlock it, or we hit a dead end. And it's like, okay, I need a guide. I need somebody who can help me navigate my way through the understanding of these mysteries and help me, I know there's something I'm not quite connecting the dots around. And I need that oral teaching, basically. I need that key for how to connect the link. And so that is when we say, okay, I need to find my path, my spiritual family, I need the deeper understanding and deeper answers. And that ultimately is when I found my way synchronistically. The doors, and the path opened up for me to find my way into the mystery school. Now in today's world, the mystery school is very open. It's like, hey, we're here. If you're ready to be really empowered, if you're ready to be more self-leading, more, have with greater power comes greater responsibility. So if you're ready for that and you're ready to do the work that it really takes to awaken from within versus having the power always out there, then we're here, right? We're here. And you can receive initiation. You can request now to be initiated into the lineage. And so you can, just find one of the guides at the Modern Mystery School that's in your area. We have people in 55 different countries by now. There's never been a time on the planet before where the mystery school was able to be so widespread and so accessible, because we live, fortunately, at least in the Western world, we live in a time where there's greater tolerance, there's greater freedom, there's greater opportunity. So we can be out in the open. Whereas in the past, there were times where your life was at stake if you were open about having these beliefs or practices that were alternative from the religious dogma of the day, for example. I mean, we had witch hunts, we had inquisitions, persecutions, and so forth that would chase it underground ultimately, because certain powers that be, that they don't want people, the general people, to be in their power. So, wherever there was a source that would empower them, they would often try to stomp it out, call it heretical or call it evil or whatever they might have done to try and create distrust and fear in people about it. But the mystery school lineages, okay, they would go underground, but they would wait. They would make sure that there was a few brave people who were willing to preserve it, to then be making sure that it was passed on from generation to generation until the time came when the world could be more open and ready for this wisdom to surface again. And then every time that those ancient teachings would surface, we'd have an age of enlightenment, we'd have a golden age, a renaissance. We have our world today where we have this plethora of things that we can experience and explore, and now it's added with technology where you can, discover things that are on the other side of the world without having to do all the travel necessarily. But there is something about the travel and in-person experience, immersing yourself in it, not just looking at it from a distance. So I would encourage people to still seek out that in-person training where you can have the energetic transmission and the sympathetic resonance and coherence that comes from an actual initiation that will empower people.
Thank you, Dr. Theresa. And you mentioned how important it is right now in this precarious time humanity finds itself in to reach critical mass, and the value of crisis point in a way as a potential catalyst for change, transformation, growth. that makes me think of Atlantis. What can we learn, or what do the mystery school teachings tell us about this ancient civilization?
Well, Atlantis was, an advanced civilization that was upon the earth, and they had great technology, and they also had very much a spiritual tradition. They had a priesthood and very educated and so forth, and everybody, had the opportunity to partake of the energies of the various temples, a healing temple, a temple of beauty, a temple of music and dance, education, and they could go and they could treat the mind and bring the mind back to a more balanced and whole state. There was amazing things that they were able to partake of in their society. But one of the warnings that comes with the tales of Atlantis is also that some of the, maybe the ego, we have to really watch out for the ego and how the ego tries to grab a hold of the power, and it gets a bit greedy for that power, greedy for more, to transcend, to maybe even be dominant over nature or over the universe. We have to be careful around the inflation of the ego when it comes to this. And on any spiritual path, I don't care what spiritual tradition you follow, the more you learn, the more powerful you become, the more you have to watch your ego. The more you have to be careful, because it can always, it's very tricky, it's very intelligent, and it will always find that little crack, that little attachment that you might have, whether it's an attachment to recognition or attachment to power, or an attachment to, needing something from others, whatever it may be. We have these little attachments, and those attachments can be those places that the ego derails us. So we always have to be very vigilant. And so it's this fine line between becoming expanded in our self-awareness of ourselves as divine beings, as gods almost, while also remaining humble. And humble doesn't mean meek or weak or I'm not worthy. Humble is that I am a divine being, but I also recognize always that there is a greater and higher power than me that I am accountable to at the end of days. And I'm going to do everything I can to remain in alignment with that higher will, rather than it being my will over anything else, right? So it's about recognizing that there is a divine will of God if you want. There's a will of nature and the universe. There's a certain order to things, a certain flow. And we want to understand that order and that flow and how to align with it, rather than try to just conquer it, right? It's about, and this is something that we see happening in our world today. You have in the past, like industrial age is like, well, just, it's just there for our taking and we're going to do, and it doesn't matter if we destroy in the process of creating our technologies. But now we're realizing, well, actually we have a lot to learn from nature, and instead of trying to just, do it by our own will and ignore the laws, we want to align, we want to mimic in a way, right? They call it biomimicry, for example, or a lot of the green technologies and sustainable ways of building architecture, for example, are trying to come more into alignment with those principles of nature and the universe, versus being in discord with, right? So we want to create harmony rather than disharmony. And I think in Atlantean times, they went a little too far to try and conquer, and they, or a little greedy for the next level of power, and they ramped things up a little too much, and then it destabilized. It went out of harmony, but in a very powerful way, which then created earth changes and affected the magnetic grids, and then you had, flooding and tectonic plates adjusting, and continents sunk and continents rose, and floods and all of this, and there was self-destruction right there. And we are very close to that point in our society today. So we want to make sure that we learn how to stay in harmony with the laws of nature and the universe, versus going too far because our ego says, well, there is no spiritual side to things, and therefore it's whatever technology wants to come through, without having the wisdom of how we want to apply it the right way.
And before we finish up, I have to ask you about your necklace. It's a very interesting symbol. What does it represent?
This is the scarab. It's an Egyptian, the Khepri, the Egyptian god, that was the scarab, or the beetle, that was said to carry the sun god Ra over and through the sky. And they were also said to be self-generated, and the dung beetles, for example, they would roll and out of the mud or out of the dung, they would, life would emerge. This is sort of in the old shamanic traditions. So the scarab is often a symbol of transformation, alchemy, regeneration, being self-created. And it's a very special symbol to me. I have a couple scarabs. Actually, my ring is also a scarab. This one's a moldavite. This one's the lapis lazuli. I have a couple of them. So
it's very beautiful.
Alchemical.
As are you, and your soul shines through. And thank you so much for the wisdom. This has been an extremely special, very inspiring conversation with Dr. Theresa. And she's really urging each and every one of us to dig deep within to access that key code to our own transformation. And we can contribute to the collective transformation from there. I'm Kristen Gillespie, your conscious investigative reporter, bringing you this exclusive interview and many more from the Awakening UFO and Conscious Life Expo. Thank you, Dr. Theresa.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise.